The Zodiac Killer is one of the most infamous uncaught serial killers in American history. An individual who terrorized California between 1968 and 1974 with a series of murders, taunting letters, and cryptic ciphers that have fascinated and frustrated investigators for more than half a century. His crimes blend mystery, brutality, and psychological manipulation, creating a case so perplexing that it remains unsolved to this day. To understand the Zodiac, we must go back to the late 1960s, a period of cultural upheaval, changing social dynamics, and a California landscape far different from the one we know today. The Zodiac story begins on December 20th, 1968, on a remote stretch of road known as Lake Herman Road near the town of Berryessa. It was here that high school students David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were out on their first date. They parked on the quiet, isolated road, something many young couples did at the time. At some point that night, a car pulled up behind them. The attacker approached, and what happened next was sudden and merciless. Betty Lou Jensen was shot 5 times in the back as she tried to run, and David Faraday was shot in the head at close range. There were no witnesses, no suspects, and no clear motive. At that moment, investigators had no idea they were looking at the first confirmed attack of a serial killer who would soon announce himself to the world. If you would like to see more content like this, like and subscribe. The next known attack took place on July 4th, 1969, Independence Day, at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were sitting in their car when another vehicle pulled up behind them. Within moments, the attacker opened fire with a 9mm handgun. Michael survived, but Darlene died from her injuries. The killer left the scene, but this time, he didn't vanish silently. 40 minutes after the shooting, a man called the Vallejo Police Department to report the crime. He spoke calmly, almost casually, telling the dispatcher not only that he had just committed the attack, but also that he was responsible for the murders at Lake Herman Road 6 months earlier. That phone call marked the birth of a nightmare. Just a month later, on July 31st, 1969, 3 major newspapers in Northern California, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald, each received a letter. Inside were pages written in a taunting, confident tone. The writer demanded that his letters be published on the front page of each newspaper, or he threatened to embark on a killing spree. More disturbing than the threats, however, was the inclusion of a cryptogram, a cipher made of strange symbols arranged in what looked like encrypted military code. The writer claimed that once solved, the message would reveal his identity. The letters were signed with a symbol that would soon become infamous, a circle with a cross through it. The newspapers published the ciphers, and thousands of readers tried to solve them. And then, incredibly, a high school teacher and his wife cracked the 408 symbol cipher just days later. The decrypted message did not reveal a name. Instead, it contained chilling statements about the killer's motives, suggesting he killed for pleasure and believed murder would ensure an afterlife of servitude from his victims. The Zodiac had made his presence known, and he had no intention of stopping. On September 27, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time at Lake Berryessa. College students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were relaxing on the shores of the lake when a man wearing an execution-style hood with sunglasses approached them, holding a gun. He claimed to be an escaped convict who needed money in their car. But before they could react, he bound their hands and brutally stabbed them. Cecilia died from her injuries, while Brian survived. Before leaving the scene, the killer walked to the victim's car and wrote a message on the door, listing his previous crimes and drawing his signature crossed circle symbol. The Zodiac had escalated, revealing a willingness to kill not just from a distance with a gun, but up close and personal with a knife. Only weeks later, on October 11, 1969, the Zodiac killed again, this time in the city of San Francisco itself. Paul Stein, a cab driver, picked up a passenger in the Presidio Heights district. At some point during the ride, the passenger shot Stein in the head and calmly wiped down the taxi before walking away. But this time, the Zodiac didn't escape unnoticed. 3 teenagers witnessed the killer leaving the scene and called the police. Officers arrived quickly and even unknowingly spoke to a man walking nearby, believed by many to have been the Zodiac himself, but due to a mistaken dispatch description, they let him go. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received a letter from the Zodiac, complete with a piece of Paul Stine's bloody shirt as proof. He mocked police for failing to catch him and threatened to attack school buses next. The threat sent waves of panic across the Bay Area. Parents escorted children to school. Police cars followed buses, and the Zodiac reveled in the attention. Over the next several years, from 1969 to 1974, the Zodiac continued sending letters. Some were long, others brief, and many contained new ciphers. In April 1970, he sent the infamous "My name is Quest" letter, which included a cipher believed to contain his identity, but that cipher remains unsolved to this day. Other letters included diagrams, claims of additional murders, and bizarre references to pop culture. One letter referenced the hit movie The Exorcist, calling it the best satirical comedy I have ever seen. Another letter included a bomb diagram he claimed he buried somewhere in the Bay Area. Whether the Zodiac actually murdered more people than the 5 confirmed victims remains one of the case's biggest debates. Some investigators believe he may have been responsible for up to 37 murders, as he claimed in one letter. And then, in 1974, the letters suddenly stopped. The Zodiac seemed to vanish just as abruptly as he had appeared. Over the decades, countless suspects emerged, but none were ever definitively tied to the crimes. The most famous suspect was Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted child molester from Vallejo, whose life aligned closely with many Zodiac details. Police searched his home and interviewed him multiple times, but DNA and handwriting comparisons ultimately ruled him out, at least officially. Other suspects include Richard Gaikowski, a journalist with ties to the Bay Area, Lawrence Kane, a Navy veteran with brain injuries, and even individuals suggested by amateur sleuths online. Yet none have been conclusively proven to be the Zodiac. The ciphers remain one of the most fascinating elements of the case. The largest unsolved one, known as the Z340 cipher, was finally cracked in 2020 by a team of amateur codebreakers from around the world. The solution didn't reveal the killer's name, but it did include more taunts about not being afraid of the gas chamber. The Zodiac's identity, however, remained hidden. 55 years have passed since the first murders, and the Zodiac Killer remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. New DNA technologies continue to offer hope, and cold case investigators remain optimistic that one day the truth will finally come to light. But until that moment arrives, the Zodiac Killer will continue to loom as one of the most chilling figures in the world of true crime. A killer who used terror, intelligence, and manipulation to carve his name into history without ever revealing his identity. The myth of the Zodiac is more than a criminal case. It's a puzzle woven into American culture. It is a reminder of how dangerous an unidentified predator can be, and how a single person can outsmart police, captivate the media, and leave behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. And as long as his identity remains unknown, the story of the Zodiac Killer will continue to haunt investigators, inspire theories, and fascinate true crime enthusiasts around the world.